Hello, it's Adon here with another episode of Sales Freak. And we come to you every Wednesday. Now, today I want to talk to you about, what's the sweet spot when it comes to prospecting and how many times should you be trying and attempting? Now, there is a lot of different data out there on cold calling, on prospecting, on lead generation, and all these different tools and applications and things that you can do. Now, and theories. Now, there's also the old adage that you kind of have two schools of thought. You kind of have your old school, for lack of a better analogy, people that are kind of traditional B2B salespeople, and they talk about, pounding the pavement, using the phone, and your phone is your best friend. You have the other side which says, well, you need to be using other tools. You need to be using tools like LinkedIn, like CRMs, like journeys, like drip marketing, all these different things. And you have, well, is it all bound, inbound, outbound? What is it? And it can get very confusing. And everyone has a point of view, and everyone's point of view is very valid. And it needs to be discussed and recognized. Now, one of the problems that I see is using the term cold calling, because if you've never talked to someone before or they don't know who you are, then if you send them a text message or you DM them in social, or you text message them, or you email them, or you phone them, or whatever you do, that first touch is a cold call. I get that. And that's where kind of like the splitting hairs kind of gets into play from my perspective. Let's just forget about the different things you can do. And when we talk about a cold call, let's talk about the actual old traditional way of cold calling, which from my perspective is either walking into a facility, into someone's place of business, unknown, walking in to try to see them and sell them, or there's the phone. Okay, we didn't have social media, we didn't have text messages, we didn't have email. These are all things that are 20 to 15 years old. Okay, email came out in the mid 90s. It wasn't anything relevant to anybody until around 1999, 2000, when BlackBerry came out. Then it started to be used for business. So even email for business is 20 years old. Steve Jobs didn't come out, and Apple didn't come out with the iPhone until 2007. Then you had apps, and Facebook came out in around 2003, 4, 5, and it didn't become anything. I didn't even hear about Facebook till 2007 or 8. So, these things are new. These things are 10, 11, 12 years old. So, and they're progressing all the time. They're getting better all the time. There's new technologies coming out all the time. When we're talking about cold calling, I'm talking about reaching out to someone cold the first time. Okay. Now, there is a lot of different people out there that use the same statistic, and I tend to agree with it, that traditional cold calling, picking up the phone, phoning someone cold, walking into their place of business, that just doing those old school formats, that's it. There's about a 2% success rate. Now, that is extremely low. And I can tell you through my experience that it is at least 2%. It might even be worse than that. And so if your prospecting process, if your way of prospecting is strictly limited to either phone or walking in, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. And if you own a business or are a sales manager or a leader and have your salespeople and haven't adapted and trained them and shown them and helped them and walked them and coached them into adapting to the new technologies, then quite frankly, you shouldn't be in your job, period. And that might sound harsh, but it's true. There's no excuse anymore. You need to get on board, or you need to get off the ship and retire and go into another profession. But to call yourself a sales leader and you aren't using or advocating or pushing or promoting or teaching or coaching your salespeople to use anything other than a phone, shame on you. So now that I've said that, let's talk about what does the data say. Now, the data is changing all the time. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we get to, if we go to the, I'll go here so you can see me here. Okay. So if we go to the report that came out about 6 years ago now by InsideSales.com and Vorsight, they created a ebook talking about benefits of LinkedIn, and LinkedIn being the new cold call. And this graph comes from within that ebook. But that came out in 2015. Now, at that time, in 2015, we're only talking 6 years ago. At that time, it started talking about the different sweet spots of calling and how many times you needed to reach out and make an attempt before you connected with somebody. Now, what the data suggested at that time is that if you made more than 6 attempts, you hit a 90% success rate. And so the average success rate, the average was at 90%. When you hit 7 attempts and 8 attempts, it started going to like 91%, 92%. The growth was marginal. So the sweet spot was 6 times. Reaching out, call attempts by reaching out to somebody, a prospect, was 6 times. Now, at that time, that was interesting because the average salesperson was making 1.3 sales calls, okay, or attempts. So basically 1 attempt. They'd call once, didn't get lucky, didn't get anywhere, and they would stop calling. And why would they stop calling? Well, I think it's grossly unfair on salespeople that companies are still asking their salespeople to prospect, close, and maintain and grow. Prospect, close, maintain, and grow. So they're asking that they, put on their prospecting hat. They're asking them to put on their closing hat. They're asking them to put on their maintaining and expanding hat. And what happens is prospecting usually goes down the toilet, not because they don't want to do it, but because they make that first phone call and then an existing customer phones and they're pissed off. You need to go there and fix it, or they have an issue, or they want you to give them a quote. And so that's the low-hanging fruit. They work for commissions, they work for bonuses, they work to survive and to thrive. And so they focus on that. And then they get in that whirlwind, they stop, they start to get their heads together. They go, okay, what do I need to do? Oh, I need to prospect. They start to go to do prospecting. Same thing happens again. So for you to expect your outside salespeople to be prospecting, closing, and maintaining, expanding is just, it's unfair. And I don't think there's any reason for it, especially if you haven't trained them and have block times and things like that. Now, not every company and not every business can sit there and say, well, I'm going to have an individual person do the prospecting. My person's going to close and maintain. Some businesses can't afford to do that. Okay, but you can afford to have training. You can afford to have tools for them to do it. And if you sit back and say, well, no, I'm really tight on money, there's a lot of free things on LinkedIn. There's a lot of free things on YouTube. There's a lot of very, very cheap trainings, things like that on things like Udemy, others like that. So as early as 5-6 years ago, 6 call attempts, you had a 90% success rate. Now, people are even busier and busier and busier than ever. Over the last 10, 15 years, and there's been an explosion of information, right? And we have our cell phones and we use these as a point of information. So we have all this information coming at us now, okay? 15 years ago, we didn't have anything. We might get an email, might get a phone call. right? Then social media starts to come into play, and then it starts growing and adapting, and then you start having LinkedIn invites. You start having people DM you on Instagram, on Facebook, whatever it is, and there's just so much. And so then you talk about, the average person getting 50 or 75 emails a day. So recognizing that our prospects are busy and they are inundated with massive amounts of information is reflective in the point that the number of calls is going up. So this is something that I have definitely experienced within my organization, but it's something also that I wanted to point you out to with a great book by Tony Hughes on combo prospecting. Now, he talks about a powerful 1-2 punch to fill your pipeline and win sales. Now, what I want you to get from this is the word combo, right? Which means obviously a combination of prospecting activities. So when we look at what is self-evident in what I'm experiencing and what Tony talks about in his book, he talks about there is a new reality that many won't acknowledge. Cold calling alone is a low yield activity that can destroy morale, annoy potential clients, and even kill a sales career outright. Okay? So why does he say this? It's because if you pick up the phone and all you do is, let's say you have a list of 100 people and you just call this list. After you've gone 10, 15, 20, you're going to be very discouraged. Okay? You're going to be extremely discouraged. Okay? Especially if you're using just a phone and you're dialing the number. Okay? It's time consuming and you're going to get lost in voicemail. You're going to get lost in ringing. I recently tested my team. We went out, had a number of people calling. The average was about 1 minute and 45 seconds, and they connected with very few people, got through to very few voicemails. So you can sit back and say, well, I've seen some different people talking about, how do you improve it? Well, you can change the time you call. You can do this. You can do that. Yeah, you can put a round peg in a square hole too. It doesn't work, okay? It is a tool that you can use as part of your practice, but to rely just on phoning is a complete waste of time. So what can you do? Well, and what does it take? Well, this is what I found interesting about Tony's book, and he quotes from it. And what he's saying, and I advocate this is true, that it takes 18 call attempts to get business executive on the phone in 2017. It is forever increasing. And so what I want you to get out of this and to recognize is that we need to change the way we are prospecting. And if anyone tells you anything different and says, no, just use the phone, then either they have methods that I have been unable to think of, research, learn, and try and implement, or they're lying. So it's one of the two. And if you do know a way that the phone works and it is absolutely awesome and no need for other tools, then please reach out to me, and I'd love to have a conversation with you and learn from you. It doesn't work at this from everything I've done. Okay, you'll see here at the end of this quote, it says, which is why sales intelligence and dialing software is essential. Now, dialing software is one part, but sales intelligence is another. And so that is imperative. And that's why a combination of using text messages, email, phone calls, LinkedIn, all of the different aspects, webinars, podcasts, all of these things are critical. But it's like throwing spaghetti against the wall unless you measure it, right? So if you do a podcast, if you make a phone call, if you do a webinar, if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, if you send an email, a newsletter, a video, you want to be able to track that, to be able to sit back and say, okay, I've sent this person 10 things and they haven't opened one thing. I'm going to put them on the back burner right now. But I've reached out to this person and they've opened every single thing. They've opened up the LinkedIn. They've read the emails. They've watched the videos. They've clicked on to check out my website. These are things that we can do, we can know, we can learn, which takes the probability and takes time out of the equation. Your time, wasting it on the phone. So before we close off, I'd like to have a little word from our sponsor, Janitorial.
Janitorial Marketing Solutions is a digital media company that specializes in the B2B commercial cleaning supplies and services sector. Salespeople are simply too expensive to work on low-value activities such as cold calling and staying top of mind with customers. This can be done cheaper, faster, and simpler using our revenue production marketing process, RPM. So, what do? Outbound prospecting calls. When prospects have indicated interest through their online behavior or digital fingerprint, introduction phone calls are initiated. Lead building. We create a list of prospects for your specific geographical region, including phone numbers, email, contact names, and more, according to your intended target market. Lead capture. Make your website a revenue driver with a lead capture form or instant webinar to collect leads and begin nurturing a prospect until sales ready. Retargeting. When a lead visits your website, we can market to them on other platforms using lead tracking technology. Email marketing. We create industry-relevant newsletters and videos to educate and engage your customers and prospects. Social media. We post to LinkedIn and Facebook to create awareness, educate, and stay top of mind with your customers and prospects. Register for our free live webinar. Is cold calling dead? B2B janitorial prospecting tactics to grow revenue while sales stays focused on closing more business. Sign up today.
All right, so there you have it. We need to look at other methods and prospecting and recognize that it takes anywhere between 6 and 25 attempts. And as long as you are professional, ethical, responsible, and adding value, very few people are going to get annoyed with you because you're hitting them and reaching out to them in different platforms in different methods. If you don't have the time, the bandwidth, or the know-how to do this, we can help you with this. We specialize in this. I hope you found this of value. I'm Adon Rigg. You are watching Sales Freak. We come to you on Wednesdays, and I will see you in the next episode.